Heartwarming story revealed, little girl starves for 5 days, then an unexpected millionaire transforms their lives. In the small town of Maplewood, winter raged like a wild beast. The skies were gray, and the snow piled high, wrapping the town in a hushed blanket of cold. It was unforgiving. Inside a modest home, 5-year-old Lily sat at the kitchen table, staring at an empty plate. Her eyes, bright with dreams, were dimmed by hunger. She imagined the delicious meals she once shared with her mother, Sarah, thinking of the warm laughter that filled their little home. But today, that laughter was muffled by the ache of an empty stomach. 5 long days with nothing to eat. Sarah, a single mother, felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. Since losing her job at the local diner, the bills had piled up, much like the snow outside. Her eyes often drifted into a distant gaze, lost in thoughts of how she could provide for her baby girl. Each day felt like a battle. The bond they once shared was fraying, each pang of Lily's hunger striking Sarah's heart like a bitter chill. Days passed. The neighbors in Maplewood nodded to each other with concern but were weighed down by their own struggles. They were good folks, but the town was tough, and pride often held them back from reaching out. They wondered how Sarah and Lily were holding up while fighting their own silent battles. Then disaster struck. A fierce windstorm swept through the town, knocking power out and rattling windows as if the heavens had unleashed their fury. Amidst the chaos, Jim returned. A former veteran turned millionaire, Jim had left Maplewood years ago, and the wealth he'd acquired had changed him. But deep down, he still carried the memories of what it meant to be part of a community. Hearing whispers of Lily's plight, he felt a tug at his heart. But as he drove through the snow-drenched streets, he wrestled with his intentions. Could he offer help without stepping on the pride of the town he had abandoned? The moment he parked was heavy with doubt. As he sought out Sarah's home, a storm brewed not just in the icy air, but within the hearts of the townsfolk. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That night, Sarah's vulnerability poured out in a heated defense of her struggle. Tears streamed down her face as she spoke of hunger, hope, and love. The quaint little house felt alive with emotion, electric in its raw honesty. Jim stood at the door, feeling her words resonate. Yet Jim's desire to help faced the collective scrutiny. He wanted to lift them up, but would it come across as charity from a rich man? Would it shatter their dignity? As the town wrestled with the complexities of need, passion-ignited tensions flared as they confronted what it means to truly support one another. Outside, the winter wind howled, and within that small home, hope flickered amidst despair. As past secrets and present vulnerabilities collided, the story took a turn. Could compassion truly connect these worlds? As Sarah's heart raced and Lily's fate dangled above them like a snowflake on the edge of a branch, the narrative hung suspended waiting for an answer, aching for resolution. As the night wore on, the winds whipped wildly outside, mirroring the turmoil within the hearts of Sarah and Jim. Sarah sat cradling her head in her hands, feeling a mix of desperation and fragility. The tears that fell were not only for her daughter but also for the dreams she once nurtured. With each flicker of the candlelight, the shadows danced, illustrating the turmoil in her mind. Jim lingered at the threshold, torn between the urge to rush in and comfort the grieving mother, and the fear of intruding on her heartbreak. He had hesitated too long. The regret was palpable, a weight that pressed heavily on his chest. Drawing a deep breath, he stepped forward, quietly crossing into the room where hope mingled with despair. "Sarah?" His voice trembled with a blend of concern and determination. "I know things are tough right now. I want to help." Startled, Sarah looked up, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the candle. "Help? You?" After all these years, the disbelief in her tone cut through the air like a knife. "Yes," he said, his voice firm yet gentle. "I came back because I heard about Lily. I can't just stand by. I remember what it was like here. I want to be a part of this community again. Sarah sniffed and wiped her tears with the back of her hand, staring at the man who had once been a boy running through these very streets. You don't understand. This is more than just money or food. It's about pride. It's about dignity. I get it, Jim replied, his expression earnest. But sometimes accepting help is a pathway to healing. You don't need to carry this burden alone. You have me now, and I want you to know that. Lily, sitting quietly at the table, looked up at Jim with wide eyes full of innocence. She didn't fully understand the weight of the conversation but felt the warmth that filled the room as Jim spoke. It was palpable, like a blanket wrapping around her small shoulders. She sensed that perhaps, just maybe, everything could change. I can offer you food, warmth, and support, Jim continued. But more importantly, I can help you find a job. Together, we can rebuild. You and Lily deserve that. A flicker of hope sparked in Sarah's eyes, but her guarded heart hesitated. And what do you get out of this? Just to cleanse your conscience? I get to be part of something real again, he admitted, stepping closer. I want to know you both without the weight of the past hanging over us. I want to help. The room fell silent. Outside, the wind howled. But in this little kitchen, all that mattered was understanding, connection, and the promise of a new beginning. Suddenly, the door creaked open further, revealing a group of hesitant neighbors who had congregated outside, drawn by the warmth radiating from within. Each face reflected the uncertainty and a longing to help, yet they too needed a catalyst to bridge the divide. Sarah's heart raced. Could this be a turning point? Would the town come together? Tension filled the room, vibrating in the air, pregnant with possibilities. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, a loud crackle of thunder echoed, breaking the moment. The power of community lay tantalizingly close, yet uncertain. Will you trust me? Jim asked, his voice steady, eyes searching hers for an answer. As Sarah's breath hitched in her throat, she faced the reality before her, knowing the next words could change everything. The snow continued to fall outside, each snowflake a whisper of yet unexplored potential. Would she allow herself to be vulnerable, to let the community back in? With the weight of the moment pressing down on them, the question lingered. Would they choose to embrace change or hold on to the past that had become so heavy to carry? The crack of thunder resonated once more, but this time it sounded like a signal. A voice broke the silence, one that belonged to Mrs. Thompson, an elder neighbor with a heart as big as the sky. Sarah dear, we're here for you, she said, stepping into the room with the others close behind. The small group of neighbors, faces illuminated by the flickering candlelight, filled the doorway, transforming the moment. Sarah's heart swelled with emotions: fear, hope, disbelief. Their presence felt both overwhelming and comforting. Each face spoke of a shared history, the laughter and sorrows mingled in common experiences. Is it true what we heard? Asked Tom, a burly man with a soft demeanor. Little Lily needs us? A nod from Sarah was all it took. In an instant, the storm outside seemed to echo the rising tide of determination within. The neighbors filed into the room, creating a little sanctuary of warmth and solidarity. One by one, they started sharing small bags of food, blankets, and heartfelt reassurances. Jim stood back momentarily, watching the transformation unfold. He caught the flicker of something in Sarah's eyes. Was it relief? Perhaps a renewed trust? He didn't know where he fit into this new dynamic, but he felt an overwhelming longing to be a part of it. Together, we can support you, Mrs. Thompson continued, her voice a soothing balm. You don't have to carry this weight alone, Sarah. We're family here. As she said the word family, Sarah felt the dam inside her begin to break. The assurances, the warmth, the very act of community gathered around her felt like an anchor in the storm. She took a shaky breath and finally spoke, her voice breaking. I don't know how to say thank you. You don't have to, said Tom with a gentle smile. Just let us in. The words struck a chord, resonating deeply within her. Meanwhile, Lily, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, sat up straight. Her delicate hand found Jim's, tugging him down to her level. Are you staying? she asked with wide, hopeful eyes. The world outside might have been a whirlwind, but this room felt like a bubble of protection, where laughter and quiet giggles could reign. Jim exchanged a glance with Sarah, who glanced back at him, a mix of gratitude and apprehension sewn into her features. He nodded, his heart thumping loudly against his ribs. "I'm here for as long as you want me," he promised. Suddenly, an unexpected vision of possibility opened in front of Sarah. What if this community could truly support them? What if she opened her heart, just a little, to accept help? Could this be the change she so desperately needed? But then doubt crept in, and old patterns of mistrust flared up. The task ahead felt monumental. Would accepting help mean surrendering parts of herself? Could she allow her pride to take a back seat? The wind howled furiously outside. Perhaps it was mirroring the heart-tugging conflict she faced. She took a deep breath, needing to anchor herself amid the storm of emotions swirling within. "Okay," Sarah finally said, her voice steadier. "I'm willing to try. But I need your help not just for food, but to rebuild. If we're going to do this, we need to do it together." Almost immediately, a chorus of agreement rang out. The neighbors spoke over each other, eager and determined to start planning a garden, a job search, anything to bring stability back into their lives. In that moment, surrounded by kindness and community, Sarah felt a flicker of something she thought was lost: hope. But just as the warmth swelled within her, a distant howl of sadness washed over her thoughts. Would it truly stay this way? Would Lily be okay? With uncertainty still hanging, Sarah locked eyes with Jim, who regarded her with newfound respect. There was so much more at play here. As plans began to unfold and laughter bubbled through the room, the promise of tomorrow took shape. But lurking just under the surface was an unease that something, perhaps the very bond she sought, could slip through her fingers. How would she face the challenges ahead? And would the community they built withstand the lurking shadows of the past? The night wore on, but the future remained a question mark. The storm wailed outside, a cacophony of wind and rain that felt like a world trying to break in. Inside, laughter and chatter slowly filled the small room. Sarah watched as her neighbors pored over an old table, covered in a mix of food and a few faded papers detailing plans. Each voice punctured her lingering doubts, nudging her heart toward an unfamiliar warmth. It was as if every shared memory and whispered secret was knitting them together, one thread at a time. "All right, folks," said Tom, trying to orchestrate the gathering. "Let us hear everyone's ideas. We need a plan." His enthusiasm was infectious. As Sarah listened, snippets of conversation began to wash over her like a comforting wave. They discussed ways to make the vegetable garden bigger, how to set up a schedule for cooking meals, and even formed a rotation for babysitting Lily. Sarah felt simultaneously overwhelmed with gratitude and stunned by the sheer generosity of these people she'd known for years but never fully opened up to. Jim sat beside her, his presence steady and reassuring. Every so often, their eyes would connect. In those moments, he seemed to be saying, "You are not alone." It felt like a lifeline in a sea of uncertainty. Then, without warning, Lily chimed in, her small voice cutting through the trivial chatter. "Can we plant flowers too? Pretty ones?" Her face lit up with hope, and Sarah's heart swelled. It was such a deeply innocent request. Somehow, flowers felt lighter than the heavy situation they were all bearing. "Absolutely," Mrs. Thompson exclaimed. "We'll plant whatever your heart desires, sweet pea." Lily beamed, and for a brief moment, Sarah felt her worries melt away like ice in the sun. This was something she could hold on to. A chance for joy and renewal. But as they continued planning, the shadows crept in again. As much as she felt uplifted, a whisper of panic clawed at her. What if this was just a fleeting moment? Could the support of her neighbors truly last? Could she trust that this newfound camaraderie wouldn't dissolve when push came to shove? That doubt made her stomach twist, but she pushed it down. "We must make this real," she thought, willing it to be true. "Let us designate a day for starting the garden," Tom suggested. "How about Saturday? We'll need all hands on deck, and together we can make it a fun little event." Heads nodded, excitement filling the room like the warm glow of candlelight. Sarah felt a flicker of something. Was it empowerment or fear? Maybe both. "I can get a list together," she stammered, the thought of taking that step making her giddy and anxious all at once. The flickers of confidence danced behind her eyes, but she worried the opportunity to lead might be snatched away by her own reservations. "Great idea!" Jim replied, his voice a strong anchor among the flurry of activity. "You can always rely on us, Sarah." She smiled and brought her hands together, feeling the warmth that came from their support. But that familiar question lingered like an unsung song. What if she stumbled? Could she allow herself the space to be vulnerable, to accept help without feeling indebted? As the night wore on, the steady beat of the storm outside began to settle into a soft rhythm. Laughter bubbled, stories flowed, and for the first time in what felt like ages, hope began to take root in her heart. But just as she felt the storm of emotions calming, her phone buzzed. She fished it out of her pocket, her breath catching in her throat at the sight of a name flashing across the screen. Her estranged brother, Mark. With a frown etched on her face, she hesitated, feeling all the walls she'd built begin to tremble. What did he want? As the laughter continued around her, she couldn't help but wonder, would this new chapter mean facing ghosts from her past? Should she pick up the call, or let it fade into the storm? A storm was brewing inside, one that could change everything once more. Sarah stared at her phone, her heart racing. Mark. Just seeing his name sent a jolt of panic through her. How long had it been? Years? The silence between them loomed larger than any storm occurring outside. Her fingers trembled as she hovered over the screen. Should she answer? Would it just unearth old wounds? But as she looked around at her neighbors, she felt a flicker of strength. Sarah? Jim's voice broke through her thoughts, pulling her back to the room. He raised an eyebrow, concern etched across his face. Everything okay? She nodded, swallowing hard, forcing a smile. Yeah, just an old friend. He look convinced, but he returned his focus to the planning table, chatting with Mrs. Thompson about planting schedules. But Sarah felt her breath still caught in her throat. The jovial laughter around her faded into background noise. She was alone in the chaotic crowd, grappling with a decision that could change everything. Finally, she took a deep breath and hit ignore, putting the phone face down on the table. Relief washed over her, mixed with a slight guilt. It felt good to keep the past at bay, just a little bit longer. She glanced at Lily, who was now weaving flowers into a crown of greens and petals. The innocence of her joy was grounding. Perhaps this moment, this community, was the path forward. All right, folks. Tom's voice boomed, pulling everyone's attention again. Next week, we're not just building a garden. We're planting roots together. Everyone cheered, the energy rising again. But under it all, Sarah felt the familiar tremor of anxiety. Her mind raced with what-ifs as she leaned back in her chair, trying to absorb the uplifting atmosphere. Could she genuinely stay present? Was it possible to let go of the fear tied to Mark? I'll set up a group chat, she blurted out, surprising even herself. For garden plans, ideas, everything. The words felt bold, as if they broke some invisible barrier. Love it! Tom replied, grinning widely. You'll be great. The compliment felt warm against her chilly doubts. Maybe she could forge ahead in this new role. Maybe she could stand in her own light. With each idea exchanged, each smile shared, she began to feel the shadows inside her start to lift. There was a place for her here, and there was strength in asking for help. Hope flickered on, growing stronger with every shared story, every friendly rib jab. But just as she felt her spirit rise, the phone buzzed again. This time, a text. An anxious twinge rippled through her. It was Mark. The message was brief but heavy with implications. Can we talk? I need you to hear my side. The room dimmed for her in that second. Everything else faded away as she fought against the tidal wave of emotions crashing in. What could he even say? Did she dare to reopen that door? Would this new chapter bring healing or hurt? As she looked around at her neighbors, their loyalty and kindness washing over her like a warm blanket, for the first time in a long time, hope and fear collaborated within her. She took another deep breath, the text still glimmering on her screen. Would she turn her back on that chapter of her life, or would she step forward into uncertainty, opening her heart just a little more to those waiting in the wings? The choice loomed before her, and with each passing moment she felt something stirring, a silent determination to face whatever came next. But one thing was clear, she couldn't stay suspended in this moment forever. Whether to answer Mark or fully embrace her neighbors would shape what lay ahead. Would it lead to healing, or would it unravel everything? Sarah's heart pounded as she stared at her phone. The weight of Mark's message felt almost tangible, like a stone resting heavily in her stomach. Around her, laughter bubbled up, but it seemed so distant. She could almost picture Mark's face, the way his eyes used to light up when he talked about his dreams. But those memories twisted into a jumble of pain and regret, making her stomach churn. "Hey, Sarah," Jim interrupted her thoughts again, his voice softer this time. "Are you sure everything's all right?" She forced a smile, shaking her head slightly. The concern in his eyes was genuine. She didn't want to burden him with her inner turmoil. "Just a lot on my mind," she admitted, still glancing at the screen, waiting for her heart to catch up with the rest of her. "Want to talk about it?" He leaned in a little closer, his tone earnest. Sometimes he didn't realize how caring he was, but today he did. "No, it's okay. Really." She put on a brave facade, reminding herself of the renewed sense of purpose that had stirred within her moments before. The sun slipped behind the clouds, casting shadows over the gathering. Sarah's gaze drifted to Lily again, who was now giggling as she playfully tried to fit flower petals in her little brother's hair. A sense of normalcy enveloped Sarah, a reminder that joy still existed, even among complex emotions. Taking a deep breath, she reached for her phone, her fingers lingering, torn between the past pulling her back and the present that might set her free. I need to think this through." And then, she did the unexpected. Before she could second-guess herself, Sarah typed back to Mark. "Why now?" Her thumb hovered over the send button, but just as she was about to press it, a gentle hand landed on her shoulder. Turning, she found Mrs. Thompson standing there, wearing her sunny smile. "Sarah, we were just discussing the types of vegetables we could plant. You've got experience, right?" "Yeah, kind of," Sarah replied, momentarily distracted. "A community garden is about sharing skills, ideas, and hope. Just like neighbors should," Mrs. Thompson said, her eyes kindly searching Sarah's. "You should be proud of what you're doing here." The warmth from her words seeped into Sarah, igniting that flicker of strength again. She couldn't let the past take away the present or the future she was starting to build. "Thanks, Mrs. Thompson," Sarah managed, feeling a lump form in her throat. "I'm trying." "Good to hear. You let me know if you need any help getting that chat started." And with that, she drifted back to her friends. The conversation hadn't fixed everything, but it anchored Sarah back into the moment. It reminded her that she was not alone. In this community, people genuinely cared, and she had a role to play. Glancing down at her phone again, Sarah took a deep breath. She hadn't hit send yet. Part of her wanted to keep that door closed. But another part, an excited, hopeful part, nudged her. Maybe, just maybe, reopening it could lead to understanding rather than hurt. Her heart raced as she typed again. This time, she wrote, "When and where?" With a shaky breath, she pressed send. The phone buzzed alive instantly, and her pulse quickened. What had she just done? But even through the doubt, she felt a surge of adrenaline. She was taking control of her story instead of letting it control her. As the replies from the group began to flood in, a blend of excitement and uncertainty bubbled up. The next part of her journey was getting clearer, though she couldn't shake the feeling that it was only beginning. And just like that, with the decision made and the phone still buzzing in her hand, the weight of her past started to lift. But deep down, she knew, this was just the beginning of a conversation larger than she imagined. How would talking to Mark change everything, and could it lead her toward the healing she so desperately sought? As Sarah's phone continued buzzing, a mixture of thrill and anxiety coursed through her veins. Each vibration ignited hope while plunging her deeper into uncertainty. Would this meeting with Mark bring clarity or just bring back the hurt? Lily's laughter snapped her back to reality. The little girl darted by, her brother in tow, petals fluttering from his hair like confetti. Sarah couldn't help but smile at their unfiltered joy. She craved that innocence, a brief escape from thoughts of the past. Still, lurking behind the laughter was the unresolved ache surrounding Mark. "Hey!" Jim's voice broke through again, pulling her attention back. "Are you okay? You seem lost in thought." She forced a smile. "I am now. Just weighing some decisions." "That's cool. Just don't forget to enjoy today," he said, glancing over at the kids playing. The sincerity in his eyes added layers to her smile. "Yeah, you're right. I should focus on the now." Minutes passed. Sarah noticed the sun finally breaking through the clouds, lighting the gathering with warmth. She felt something shift inside her. There was something powerful about taking a small step forward, even as uncertainty loomed. The gathering began to break up, groups of people chatting excitedly as they began to plan for the community garden. Sarah saw Mrs. Thompson animatedly discussing the types of vegetables they could grow. The idea of planting something tangible filled her with a sense of purpose. Just then, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Mark's response. "This weekend, maybe Saturday? I really want to talk." Sarah's breath hitched. She didn't know what she expected, but it felt like he was reaching out from the past, pulling at frayed threads she thought she had begun to stitch back together. "Hey, do you want to plant something with me?" Jim interrupted her thoughts again, a hopeful smile on his face. Sarah hesitated, but something clicked inside her. She wanted to channel her nerves into something productive. "Sure. Let us start with tomatoes. They're easy to grow." "Good choice. We can even make salsa later." He laughed, enthusiasm lighting his eyes. As they gathered supplies, Sarah found herself chatting easily with Jim about the best techniques for growing vegetables. The more they talked, the more her worries about Mark felt distant. "Would you like to help with the gardening club?" Jim asked as they worked. "I know Mrs. Thompson would love your input." "Yeah, I think I'd like that," she replied, her spirits lifting. With each planted seed, a small weight lifted from her heart. The garden would be a living thing, growing right in front of her, unlike her relationship with Mark, which had wilted under pressure. But just as she felt a moment of peace, her phone buzzed again. Mark had sent another message. "I want to explain why I left, Sarah. Can we finally talk?" Her heart raced again. She had taken back some control, but this next step felt monumental. Would she be strong enough to face the truth? As she stood there, surrounded by the smell of rich soil and the laughter of children, a battle waged within her. Could confronting the past also mean unlocking a future? With one hand cradling a small sprout, she clutched her phone with the other. The decision weighed heavily on her. "Hey, Jim. I think I need to take a quick break," she said, suddenly overwhelmed. "Sure. I'll keep planting," he replied, unaware of the storm brewing deep within her. Walking a few paces away, Sarah looked at her phone. The messages shimmered in the sunlight, each one a reminder of choices yet to be made. She took a deep breath, her free hand trembling. What would she say? Was she ready to face whatever truth Mark had to offer? With her heart pounding, Sarah steeled herself for the next step. The past was calling again, but now she felt a flicker of courage. Could this conversation open a door to healing? Or would it send her spiraling back into pain? With that only half-formed question echoing in her mind, she hit reply, determined to step fully into her unfolding story. Would this be the moment where everything changed? Sarah stared at her phone, her mind racing. She had typed and deleted her response 3 times already. Every time she thought she had found the right words, fear crept back in. What if Mark's explanation only deepened her wounds? Taking another deep breath, she grounded herself in the present. The garden around her was vibrant and alive, each bloom whispering of new beginnings. She glanced back at Jim, who was kneeling beside a patch of freshly turned soil, his hands buried deep in the earth. He glanced up and caught her eye, offering a bright smile that momentarily chased her doubts away. "Everything okay?" he asked, tilting his head, sensing her unease. Yeah, just thinking, she replied, forcing a smile onto her face. You know, sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the best outcomes, he said, as if he sensed the weight she was carrying. Like planting these seeds? You don't always know if they're going to flourish, but you wouldn't find out unless you try. His words struck her. Wasn't that the essence of living? To take risks, to plant seeds of hope, healing, and maybe even love. With newfound determination, she typed her response. Saturday works. Let's South meet in the park. As she hit send, a flicker of something surged through her, freedom mixed with fear. There was no turning back now. She was called to confront her past, even if it frightened her. Would this meeting let her clear the air or deepen the chasm? Jim was watching her closely now, the anticipation on his face making her take a step deeper into the moment. You all right? He asked, genuinely concerned, and she nodded. Yeah, just needed to get that out of the way. Good. You're strong, Sarah. Whatever happens, I've got your back, he said firmly. The sincerity in his voice clipped her worries like a pair of garden shears, making the weeds of uncertainty fall away. She looked at him, his brow slightly furrowed with concern but a gentle warmth in his eyes. Thank you, Jim. I really appreciate that, she said, her heart swelling. Moments like these were precious, and she didn't want to take them for granted. With the sun shining down and laughter ringing in the air, Sarah squatted beside Jim. They worked together, planting and nurturing tiny seeds that would one day blossom into something beautiful. In that moment, she felt a shift inside, an awakening. But as much as she wanted to focus on the garden and the present, her thoughts spun back to Mark. What would he say? Would he try to explain the darkness that pulled him away? As they finished one row of tomatoes, a breeze swept through the park. It felt refreshing, like a whispered promise of change. Sarah's phone buzzed again, cutting through her thoughts. It was Mark, another quick message that sent her heart racing anew. I've been thinking, I really hope you'll listen. The air turned thick with anticipation, and each beat of her heart pulsed loud in her ears. Hey, need a minute again? Jim asked, noticing her distracted demeanor. Yeah, I'll be right back, she replied, stepping away from him. This time, the stakes felt higher. With her back against the sturdy tree, she clenched her phone tightly, anxiety fluttering in her stomach. Was she truly ready for this conversation? Would facing Mark only lead to more questions, or could it finally bring closure? In that moment of stillness, with the scent of the fresh earth around her, Sarah realized she had a choice. Could she let the garden represent more than just growth in nature? Could it also symbolize a fertile ground for her own heart, ready to heal? As she took a deep breath, preparing herself for the unknown, she felt both terrified and exhilarated. Would she find peace, or was this just the beginning of a tumultuous journey? Sarah's thumb hovered over the screen, heart pounding against her chest. Another message blinked at her, waiting. Taking another breath, she opened it. His words seemed to leap out, each one stamped with urgency. I've made mistakes, Sarah. I need to explain. A part of her wanted to toss the phone into the grass, to run back to Jim and the safety of the garden. But another part was drawn in, curious about how far the tangled story of her life would unfold. She could feel the warmth of the afternoon sun, comforting yet distant, a reminder of the life she was trying to reclaim. Instead of responding immediately, she chose to gather her thoughts. Breathing deeply, she forced herself to think about everything Mark had meant to her, and everything he had taken away. Memories flooded her mind, vivid and layered with emotion, the laughter, the dreams shared on starry nights, but also the heartbreak and the silence that followed. Listen to your heart, not your fears, a voice echoed in her head Jim's supportive words. She turned her gaze back towards him. He was now tending to the little green sprouts. His brow was furrowed in concentration, but the scene felt peaceful, like the world was holding its breath. With renewed resolution, she pressed back to the tree, ready to type. But then her mind flicked to Jim. She realized she couldn't keep leaning solely on him for strength. While he was a foundation, the roots of her healing had to come from within. Sarah typed back quickly, "Let us talk. Tomorrow at noon." The bench near the fountain? Before she could doubt her decision, she hit send. The phone buzzed almost immediately, a jolt of electricity running through her. Thank you? I'll be there. As she slipped her phone back into her pocket, a surge of fear mixed with anticipation hit her. You okay? Jim's voice broke through, and she faced him. Yeah, I think so, she said, trying to hide the swell of anxiety creeping back in. Jim smiled. You look like you just made a tough call. Everything all right? I just agreed to meet with someone from my past, she admitted, watching closely for his reaction. Good for you, he replied, standing up. Past or future, you're facing it head on. That's brave. His support ignited a warmth in her that was impossible to ignore. Maybe this was her moment, not just for reconciliation with Mark, but for defining who she was outside of their shared history. Hey, don't forget, Jim added, leaning closer, his voice lowered as if sharing a secret. No matter what happens, you're in charge of your story now. She nodded, and they shared a knowing smile. It was a small moment, but it resonated deeply within Sarah. The vibrant colors of the garden swirled around her, glowing with potential and warmth. Yet, even as she leaned into optimism, shadows lingered at the edges of her anticipation. The thought of Mark's pain and the hurt he could still evoke flooded her mind again. Would she find a way to bridge the gap between their shared history and her newfound strength? Or would revisiting the past shatter the fragile peace she was starting to feel? As they finished planting for the day, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the garden. A single thought lingered, haunting and electrifying. Maybe the confrontation with Mark would lead to a new understanding, or it could unravel everything she'd built. What would she choose when faced with the moment of truth? The sun rose bright and bold the next morning, casting a golden light over Maplewood. Sarah stood beside her modest kitchen window, looking out at the small but growing community garden. She inhaled, the scent of earth and hope mingling in the air, but a nervous knot twisted in her stomach as she thought of her meeting with Mark. Today would be a test of everything she had fought for: the courage to embrace the present and the strength to face the ghosts of her past. Lily danced around the living room, her laughter ringing like a sweet melody, oblivious to the storm brewing in her mother's heart. Sarah smiled, but the weight of the upcoming conversation loomed heavy. We'll be okay, she whispered to herself, clutching a mug of steaming coffee. As noon approached, she gathered her thoughts. They felt like wildflowers stuck in a tight bouquet, beautiful yet desperate for space. With one last look at Lily, now sprawled on the floor coloring, she stepped out, her heart pounding to a rhythm she couldn't quite decipher. The park felt strangely serene. Sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled patterns on the path. Each step was a mix of dread and anticipation, the bench near the fountain coming into view. Mark was already there, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, guilt etched on his face. The boy from her memories had grown into a man marked by time and regret. As she approached, their eyes locked, a silent exchange tinged with a mix of fear and familiarity. Sarah, he said, almost as if testing the name on his lips after so long. Mark, she replied, keeping her voice steady, fighting back the flood of memories. Would this be a confrontation or a conversation, a battle or a bridge? They sat in silence for a moment, the fountain bubbling behind them, drowning out the world. It felt odd, like two strangers short-circuiting memories tangled in shared laughter and unfulfilled dreams. I didn't know if you'd agree to meet, Mark began, his eyes searching hers. I miss so much, and I regret how everything played out. Regret doesn't change the past, Sarah said softly. You left. You chose to disappear. His brow knitted in pain. I know. I was scared of everything, of failing, of being a burden. I thought the best thing for you was to walk away. Walking away almost destroyed us, Mark, she shot back, feeling the anger and sorrow rise within her like boiling water in a pot. You left me alone to figure it out. For years. I realized that, he sighed, the weight of his words hanging between them. I've changed. I want to explain, to make amends. Please, just listen. Hesitation gripped her heart. Did she really want to hear him out? Memories flooded back, the sorrow, the lonely dinners, the dreams deferred. But she inhaled slowly, the warm breeze pushing her doubts aside. Okay, go on. He spoke of his struggles after leaving, how the pressure to succeed shadowed him. I made poor choices trying to cope. I was afraid I wouldn't measure up, that I'd ruin everything. I thought if I left you could move on. But it never worked, he admitted, voice trembling. I've worked to rebuild my life, and I want to be part of yours again. Her heart softened just a little, the barrier around it starting to crack. I've had to survive, Mark. Every day was a fight to pull through, especially for Lily. You don't get to decide what is best for me anymore. Not after all this time. Then let me show you I can be better, he implored, his hands clasping together. Let me be here for both of you, to help. I don't expect it to be easy, but I promise I'll do everything in my power to earn your trust back. The words hung in the air like a fragile promise, shimmering with possibility but also tinged with doubt. Sarah's stomach twisted, her resolve wavering. Mark had been her connection to the past, but now the sunlight of hope illuminated a different kind of future. I don't know how to start trusting you again, she said, her voice lower, more vulnerable. It's not that simple. I understand, he whispered, looking deeply into her eyes. But I'm here, willing to prove myself. I've seen a lot of mistakes, and letting you down is the one that haunts me most. Tears welled in her eyes as the weight of their shared history poured over them both, the complex stitches of love, anger, and loss interlaced. I have to do this for Lily, too, she confessed, her heart thundering against her ribs. I need to show her that facing fears can lead to growth, but it all seems so complicated. Life is complicated, Sarah, Mark said, reaching for her hand but stopping just short. It doesn't have to be. I can help with whatever you need. I want to show you I'm different now. Just give me a chance. Sarah steadied her breath as the sun filtered warmth over them. This can't be just a convenience for you. It has to mean something more to us. It will, he vowed, a flicker of light igniting in his eyes. Let us start with small steps, one at a time. I want to be a part of Lily's life, of yours. I can't erase the past, but I want to be part of the future. Together. Time hung fragile and beautiful around them as she mulled over his words. The doubts began melting like the snow that had covered Maplewood, uncovering the ground beneath the potential of new life. Glancing at the fountain, she recalled the laughter, the warmth she felt from her community. Perhaps this was a part of that too. A chance to seek redemption for both of them. Okay, she said finally, locking her gaze onto his. Let us see if we can find our way back, step by step. But you should know I want to make it easy. He nodded earnestly, tears glimmering in the corners of his eyes. I wouldn't have it any other way. With newfound determination, they stood together, ready to face the complexities of their shared past and uncertain future. As Sarah took a deep breath, she realized the garden they had both tended within themselves had finally begun to bloom. And as they embraced the road ahead, the warmth of their possible reconciliation shimmered, lifting the weight of yesterday and forging a more profound connection for tomorrow, exposing new beginnings. But she knew this was just a start. The journey ahead would be wild and unpredictable, like the vibrant garden that was waiting to grow messy, beautiful, and full of potential. As she turned to leave, a wind swept past, bringing with it a wave of encouragement, a reminder that healing often begins with a single seed of hope. And together they would tend to it. If you felt a spark of inspiration from this story, don't miss out. Subscribe immediately to the channel to catch more exclusive tales. Leave a like now to feed the hungry algorithm that connects us to these heartfelt stories. Comment below with your emotions and thoughts about this incredible transformation, and share instantly with at least 5 friends who need a reminder of the power of second chances. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second.